I want to revisit. I want to go to October of 2025. I think it was October 18th. And you had elected leaders here in Massachusetts at a No Kings rally on the Common. And you had people like the Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, Maura Healey, Elizabeth Warren, Ed Markey. And they were giving speeches. They had signs. And the speeches they gave was, democracy started here, they said. They said that nobody is above the law during those marches. And they were standing on the Common. They held signs, they gave speeches. And I have a message for them. Democracy is not a costume that you put on to go to a rally. Democracy is a form of government that you honor when you are home here in Massachusetts. While these same leaders were chanting "No Kings" in the streets, they were acting like absolute monarchs at the State House. They attend rallies to fight for the right to vote, yet they are nullifying the votes of 2.3 million Massachusetts residents who demanded an audit of the books. They march against unchecked power, yet they maintain a set of rules that makes them, I want you to hear this, that makes them the only legislature in the country that is not subject to public records laws or the judiciary oversight or executive oversight. The only legislature in America that has absolutely no oversight. They decry secrecy by a government, yet they spent $23,400, I think it was 30 cents of your money, on a private law firm to find a way to keep their spending your money secret. See, in Boston, No Kings apparently has an asterisk. And that asterisk means no kings except for us. They want the moral high ground to be a democracy defender while exercising the absolute power of an autocrat. They hold signs on Sunday and hide receipts on Monday. In November 2024, 72% of Massachusetts voters, who are the highest authority in the Commonwealth, ordered an audit of the legislature. The voters of Massachusetts made the audit the law. That vote wasn't a suggestion. It wasn't a request to have a conversation. It was made the law. Yet since that day, the leadership here has treated your vote like a nuisance. They have ignored the mandate. They've gaslit the public. But most incredibly, they have spent your tax dollars to hire private lawyers, basically legal mercenaries, to kill the very law that voters passed. Now, I really want you to think about that for a moment. How often, first, do we get 72% of the people, or voters, to agree on an issue? Not very often. Yet this was an easy one. Independents, Democrats, Republicans came together and they demanded the auditor to open the people's books and audit the people's money. And after that took place, the legislature takes $23,400 of your dollars to pay a law firm to help them find a way not to allow the audit of the people's books. They're using your money to help keep secret how they're spending your money. So just imagine that. The voters passed the law overwhelmingly to look at the books, and then they take some of your money to prevent from opening the books. You couldn't make this up. If I said this in a novel, you say, oh, that's ridiculous. No state would allow that. In an autocracy, the people's voice is silenced by bureaucratic privilege. By refusing the audit and using public funds to obstruct it, the legislature, the governor, the attorney general, and every single elected official in Massachusetts who remains silent, like Ed Markey, is telling each voter, every voter in Massachusetts, that your vote only matters when they like it. Your vote only matters if they agree with it. And that's why we're here today. And that's why we're moving forward with these fine people. This isn't the John Deaton show, okay? And I'm going to explain this lawsuit and how it's very different from any other type of lawsuit in a minute. But what we've done is we've come together, independents, Democrats, Republicans, and we have established what I call a two-pronged DAT attack, right? A DAT squeeze, a Democratic accountability and transparency squeeze. And it's two-part. The first part are the 24 taxpayer lawsuit that was filed on Monday. Attorney Walsh and myself filed it. I'm one of the taxpayers myself, along with these fine people. And there's others that are not here. That 24 taxpayer lawsuit is under General Law, Chapter 29, Section 63. We're asking the court to freeze the funds the legislature is using to fight the audit and to force the clerks, we're talking about the clerks of the Senate and the clerks of the House, to do their job, which is comply with the audit. And I'll explain that in a bit. But the second part of our attack is this DAT squeeze, where we've went to the federal government. The Secretary of Department of Transportation has it now. That's Sean Duffy, and Russell Volt of the OMB has it in hand as well, where we're asking for the federal government to freeze, and listen to me carefully, because my opposition will try to mislead it, and they'll no doubt lie, non-essential, non-emergency, discretionary federal funding to Massachusetts. Okay, and I'm going to go over what that does not include here in a minute. But what that is, the governor set aside, for example, $750 million matching fund. They've applied for federal grants. A lot of these politicians, elected leaders, they like to use federal funds and match it with state funds for their ribbon cutting ceremonies, their legacies that they call them, projects. Sometimes they reward their donors with this kind of money. Well, we're basically saying, no, you don't get that. If you're not going to comply with the voter mandated law in the state you live in, if you can't be transparent with state taxpayer funds, then you don't get billions of federal funds and discretionary funds. And like I said, I'll explain that in a minute. But that's sort of the two-prong attack. Let's move on to the taxpayer lawsuit, and Attorney Walsh is here when we open up for questions as well. Like I said, there's a unique law. It is a century-old law. And what it does is it says that if you get at least 24 taxpayers from the Commonwealth, and they have to be from 4 different counties, and of those 24, you can't have more than 6 from each county. It has to be a broad-based coalition. If those taxpayers feel that they've been harmed, if there's expenditure of their money that they view as illegal, for example, then they can file a lawsuit. They have standing under this statute, independent. And it's very different, because you've seen a lot of news recently, and it was a complete coincidental filing. The filing of this lawsuit took place Monday, and the state auditor filed the next day on hers. That was not coordinated or anything. That's just the way it goes sometimes, because this is separate. But you notice the Attorney General immediately, she doesn't applaud the state auditor. She doesn't say, how can I help you? She says state auditors have authority, and she's going to move to dismiss that case, because the Attorney General can cite a law that says that she is the sole attorney for state officers. And you have to get her permission to file the lawsuit. And so you're going to see her file a motion to dismiss. Well, guess what? The Attorney General can't come to this court, can't come to these fine people and say, you didn't ask for my permission, because we have a century-old statute that gives us independent standing. We don't have to ask for her permission. She can't come in and just summarily try to dismiss a taxpayer lawsuit like this. It's very different. And again, we've sued the clerks who control the checkbooks, right? They do payroll and they do things like that. They control the records, and we have a couple theories. And I did this, and there's people in the audience who know what I'm going to say. We sued the federal government. I sued the federal government on a writ of mandamus. And a lot of people said, oh, it's never going to work. It's never going to work. Well, it ended up working. And we have a similar theory here. Writ of mandamus basically goes to the court and says there is a state officer not doing their job. And we're asking you, judge, to order them to do their job. So the auditor has the law. The law is comply with the audit. And those clerks are not complying with the audit. And they don't have legislative immunity the way that Ron Mariano or the way Karen Spilker has it. They don't have that level. This is not a discretionary legislative function. It's a ministerial function. Just open the books and give her documents and receipts. That is not privileged under the law as far as I'm concerned, and that distinguishes our case as well. And then, of course, I've already explained to you the illegal spending of the money, the $23,000. And let me just say this. There's two things that people should be concerned about here. One is respect for the taxpayer, obviously. Number two is that we've already witnessed that fraud has taken place in Massachusetts. Fraud isn't unique to Minnesota or California. The U.S. Attorney's Office here has uncovered $12 million in SNAP fraud. Diana DeZaglia said has uncovered that they spent $7 or $8 million getting people to sign NDAs. I'm a lawyer. Let me tell you what that means. Oh, you're going to be a whistleblower? Here's $500,000. You got to sign this document that says you can't talk about it, though. That's buying silence. And that's what's happening in Massachusetts. And so we're going and saying, look, they took this money, $23,000. And anybody else says, oh, John, it's $23,000. It's not a lot of money. That's taxpayer money, and that's money. That's every dollar that's being wasted isn't going to schools, isn't going to education, isn't going to roads, isn't going to housing, and isn't going back to the taxpayer. So every dollar counts. And real briefly, I talked about the federal freeze. I want it to be clear. My call for the suspension of federal funding has what's called a vulnerability shield built into it. I have expressed and made explicit to the Secretary of Department of Transportation and to the OMB that there should continue to be 100% funding for SNAP. There continue a funding for K through 12 low-income schools, for critical infrastructure and for emergency service. Those are all essential funding. That's not to be touched. But the federal funds for the governor's pet projects, clean energy projects, where she's applied for federal funding, that gets frozen as far as I'm concerned. Also, what I've requested is that there's been $2.1 billion allocated for the Cape Cod bridges. I want that money. It's been allocated but not distributed. I want that money to continue to come to Massachusetts, but it should go into an escrow account, not the state legislature or the governor, and it has what's called a transparency rider. To prove to you that this is a nonpartisan issue, I'm going to call the transparency rider the DeZaglia clause, okay, in honor of what the state auditor is doing, which simply says you get this money when you show that you are in compliance with your own voter mandated transparency laws and the audit. There is federal law that I've cited that allows, you don't get these federal funds unless there's transparency. And think about it, if we don't know how our tax dollars are being spent, our state tax dollars, and the governor is $3 billion over budget, and they're not opening the books, you don't get extra billions in federal dollars as well with no transparency. So, but again, I'm not calling for any type of funds to be withheld for those in need. To the leaders who attend the No Kings rallies, if you want to honor the democratic will of your own people, you have to prove you cannot be trusted with the discretion of federal billions of dollars. All right, we're done with the hypocrisy. We are done with leaders who preach democracy on the weekend and practice autocracy on Monday morning. It's time to open the books. It's time to honor the voters. And it's time to prove that in Massachusetts, we believe what we say. No kings, no queens. There's no asterisks. So put down your signs and pay attention to what's happening here in Massachusetts. And with that said, if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to take any questions. And like I said, Attorney, did you have any comments you wanted to say?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions, but
okay.
Doing great.
Anybody have any questions? Yes, Jack.
Just the most basic question. I'm just a little fuzzy on this.
Sure.
You're suing in state or federal court or both? Or
state court.
You're suing state court.
It's state court, yes.
And part of that state court suit is this federal fund issue. Is that correct?
No, the tax.
Two different issues.
I am obviously seeking a federal office for U.S. Senate, so I needed a plan that would at the federal level, and that was the plan to address the federal issues. But the taxpayer lawsuit is strictly in state court and related to getting compliance of the audit, but also addressing that illegal expenditure of funds. And
so the holding of the fund is a proposal that you favor as a U.S. Senator?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's not part of the lawsuit?
It's not part of the lawsuit. I'm hoping to have a meeting. Like I said, the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, and the O&D Director, Russell Volt, I'm hoping to have a meeting soon to implement it.
And if you were a Republican senator, theoretically, you'd have a friendly ear.
I would have a friendly ear. And since I am the presumptive Republican nominee, I will be that presumptuous to say it at this point. For U.S. Senate, I'm hoping to get that friendly ear without having to become a U.S. Senator first. Anyone else have any questions? Yes.
Do you have a projected timeline for the end game here when you actually do the book?
No, but Mike, why don't you come up and explain sort of the timing on the
so
lawsuit?
right now, the case is currently filed before the single justice of the state Supreme Court, which is also sometimes referred to as the county court. It's before the single justice of the whole seven panel. They have several options. They may take the case and litigate it at that level. If there's interesting issues, they may combine it with the auditor's case or not. They may refer it to the full seven panel for hearing, as it happens on issues of court policy, or they may choose to lower it to the lower court for fact finding before they bring it back. So in terms of timetable, we're actually kind of waiting to see what their position is, but we're ready to go under any circumstances.
One thing I would say too to distinguish, the auditor, God bless her, first of all, and her efforts. She has this bigger fight, separation of powers fight that they're going to argue. We have a more narrowed, focused approach in our case, and so I'm hopeful that the auditor's case will survive a motion to dismiss. But that motion dismiss is coming, in my opinion, based on Andrea Campbell's immediate comments, calling it a ploy and all these things that she's made. And obviously she's attacking the state auditor. But this is a very different case. In some ways, one could argue that our case may have more teeth to it because we don't have to seek the permission of the Attorney General. Now, the Attorney General can try a motion to intervene in our case, but she can't just summarily try to dismiss it because we didn't get permission. We don't need her permission. If she did her job, we wouldn't be in this position. It's crazy. We have an Attorney General that I believe she's at number 30 lawsuit against President Trump at this point in a year, and suing towns and cities across the Commonwealth related to the MBTA. But she won't touch what she approved. She approved question 1. She approved it. As a proper question on the ballot, it became law overwhelmingly, and now they want to just ignore it. And it's disgusting is the word that comes to my mind. If I wasn't running for U.S. Senate, I'd be tempted to run for Attorney General. just to stay on the debate stage. Yeah. Hey, did you have a question? I'm sorry. Now, like I said, this isn't just the John Deaton show. Obviously, we have other taxpayers here that, and listen, these people deserve credit because a lot of times people don't want their name. You know, they may complain about the audit and they may be outraged, but you know, when you say, "Do you want your name to be public?" and I have to tell you, a reporter may call you, and you know, who knows? Who knows with the kind of government leadership we have here? I need to tell you that you might assume that somehow you'll get attacked somehow, and people have said no. They support the case, but they don't want to be exposed. And they've also said they're fearful that there would be some type of retaliation from their own government. Sounds like an autocracy to me. It sounds like that. And I've said it, and I'll say it again. Massachusetts is far more of an autocracy than the federal government could ever be in present day, the way they're acting. Like I said, they're the only state legislature that basically they could be right now shredding documents at this very moment, say, well, we're not subject to the public records. And since we're not subject to the public records, we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't do anything illegal. They did something wrong, but they would make the claim that they didn't do anything illegal. That is insane that is what we're faced with here today in Massachusetts. And it is shame on Ed Markey. You know, I posted Seth Moulton probably 5 times, and he finally came out and said, yeah, they should do the audit law. But where's Elizabeth Warren? Where's Ed Markey? Where is the Massachusetts delegation? The people who say democracy is under threat. Democracy is at stake. No one is above the law. Where are they at? That level of hypocrisy is unimaginable to me. But that's the state of Massachusetts. But like I said, these people are courageous because they put their names out there. They're exposing themselves. And if anyone wants to speak up on how you feel, why you joined the lawsuit, feel free to do it. You don't have to, but I want to make sure that you're given the recognition you deserve. Anyone? No? No more questions? Thank you.